Hey, Instagram. Okay, I want to do this live because I'm finally back from the UK. I was in the UK, by the way, for last week, which is why I was a little slow to jump into this Candace internet firestorm and just I guess to let you guys know what happened. By the way, obviously it's late. I'm in Eastern Standard Time right now, so you're getting Candace in a bathrobe. Okay. Okay, so first off, let me back this up for people that were not aware of this scandal between me and Alec Baldwin, because it's important for people to know where it came from. Okay, so obviously Alec Baldwin shot someone on set and killed someone by accident. He was firing something in his movie and he killed someone. Okay, and when I went onto Twitter, I saw everybody talking about this, and a lot of people were kind of like, oh, well, he deserves it because of how nasty of a person Alec Baldwin has been, like in general, like eventually karma catches up with you kind of perspective. And so I tweeted kind of considering that point and being understanding, I guess, of that perspective for people that have felt just so disrespected. And so I guess that's been too weak of a word. I should say so dehumanized by Alec Baldwin. He's really a part of, that media personality that spent 4 years concentrated on dehumanizing Trump supporters. So I understood where that sentiment was coming from. And so I tweeted on the fly. I said, I'm going to try to actually get it verbatim. I said, Alec Baldwin killing someone, murdering. I said, Alec Baldwin murdering someone would be an example of poetic justice if it weren't for the fact that there actually was a real victim here. We should instead pray for the family, Tweeted that, and then somebody said to me, Candace, actually, it's not murder. You can't say he's a murderer because it wasn't done with intent. You should say killing. And so I deleted the tweet, and I wrote deleting that last tweet because Alec Baldwin did not murder someone. He killed them. And then I left it. And then I came back to find a real headline on the Daily Mail, which said, Candace Owens says, Alec Baldwin killing someone is poetic justice. Just completely, that was the headline, completely left off the other part of my tweet, completely took my entire tweet out of context, and then proceeded to say, Candace Owens deleted the tweet because she was getting so much flack for it. I mean, I deleted this tweet almost immediately after I realized I used the wrong word, not because I was getting any flack for it. I was in the UK, was not even like on my phone, was at an event. And I was so angry because, it's the exact opposite of what I said for people that have taken. This is a basic English, right? You either understand English or you don't, right? So if you've taken any logic and reasoning class, you understand statements that are inverse, converse, contrapositive. Like, I will wear a jacket if it's snowing. If it's not snowing, I will not wear a jacket. The fact that I said this would be poetic justice if it weren't for the fact that a real person got hurt, therefore we should pray for the victim, makes it very clear that what I'm saying actually is this is not poetic justice because a victim got hurt. That's the literal translation of what I said. This is not poetic justice because an individual got hurt and we should instead pray for the family. But the media doesn't care. And so unbeknownst to me, this headline went like baby viral, and I went online and I was tagged. Alec Baldwin, who is his daughter, tagged me in a post that was just like, you're the most hateful, vitriolic person I've ever heard of. Like, just a super like stab me kind of post about, and it had a picture which was sourced, from a Daily Mail's headline. And I'm not gonna lie, I saw this and I was just like, first and foremost, you have some nerve, like was my first perspective. Like, you have some nerve as the daughter of Alec Baldwin to call any person in this entire world vitriolic, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion. Like, I have never seen an actor, as maybe Jim Carrey would be a close second, who has been so disgusting and so vitriolic, actually gets paid to do it, which is even more incredible. For 4 years, he was just paid to be a vitriolic person. And I'm not talking about just on Saturday Night Live. I'm talking about in his interviews. I'm talking about, him saying that Trump should be buried in a Nazi cemetery and his supporters are this and supporters are that. I'm talking about someone who made a concerted effort to dehumanize people for 4 years. And I cannot comprehend any individual with the last name Baldwin ever calling anybody else vitriolic. That just has to be a word that is dropped from their vocabulary altogether. Just crush it, okay? So I'm sitting here and I'm reading this and I'm like, first off, like, don't tweet at me. Don't tweet at me. Don't Instagram me. Don't tag me. Like, I'm really not the one, especially with these Hollywood types, if you haven't figured it out. Like, I just do not, this is not a sorority I am pledging. I do not care about the Hollywood types. They are not cool to me. I don't find them to be smart. I don't find them to be funny. Like, this is just, no, don't do it. People have made this mistake before. So I see this and I like to see red because they're a bit drug. And I like responded to the tag and I was just like essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm saying to her, like, have you lost your mind? Like, do you know who your father is? Like, do you know who your dad is? Like, is he not your dad maybe? Like, is there a paternity suit that needs to happen? Like, is he not your father? Because if he's not your dad, then this would make sense. And then I said to her, and can you read? Like, can you comprehend the English language? I literally said the exact opposite of this, right? I phrased it in a way that could be, tricky if you haven't gotten past, maybe I learned inverse, converse, contrapositive stuff when I was in 8th grade. Like, maybe if you haven't gotten past 8th grade, you could read this and say, Candace said this, but this is not what my tweet objectively said. And I said, you're pulling from a Daily Mail headline. Did you read the actual article? Because they obviously at the bottom of the article put the full tweet and also said, like, and she prayed for the victims. But most people don't read. Most people, A, don't read beyond a headline, and B, don't know how to read, right? So it was almost like the tweet was too advanced. I needed to say, this is not... this is not because this, rather than saying this would almost be if, but this. It was too tricky. The composition of the sentence was too tricky. And so now I have her in my, tagging me something that is the exact opposite of what I said. And I'm just like seeing red. And she comes back at me really quickly and she's just like, how could you say this? Like, there's a 9-year-old boy who's is going to grow up without a mother. This is a terrible accident, like all of this stuff. And I just don't understand how you could say this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And she's like kind of taking stabs at me. I'm taking stabs at her. And I'm just like, honestly shocked, by her perspective, which she shared, that had this have happened the other way around and Trump had done this, like she would have some sympathy. And I genuinely struggle to believe that part. Like maybe behind closed doors, she maybe would have had some sympathy. I don't know. But I genuinely struggle to believe that the humanity that is being demanded of Trump supporters right now, people that were dehumanized, right? Alec Baldwin being one of the leaders of the pack, dehumanized, put into the context of Nazis, Nazi supporters, right? People that should be buried in Nazi cemeteries should now dig inside themselves and find humanity to feel bad for Alec Baldwin. Like, it just doesn't work like that, right? It is entirely possible to feel bad for the victims of this, right? Being the child that is gonna grow up without a mother, being the woman who lost her life, and also not feel bad for Alec Baldwin. You don't have to feel bad for Alec Baldwin to acknowledge that this is a tragedy, and that somebody's family, an innocent life was taken by this, and an innocent life is going to be impacted by this. Like, this is not don't allow the media to create a false dichotomy that either you need to feel bad for Alec Baldwin, or you're a horrible person. I don't feel bad for Alec Baldwin. I do feel bad for the victim's family. And the reason I don't feel bad for Alec Baldwin is because I'm not going to be required to feel bad for a person that made living so difficult for people, who just voted their values, meaning, did Alec Baldwin feel bad when he was painting Trump supporters as Nazis? Did he feel bad for the moms who voted for him because their sons and daughters and husbands were killed by illegal aliens when he presented building the wall perspective as a Nazi perspective? Did he ever look at those people as human beings? Did Alec Baldwin ever feel bad when he gave people the permission to attack these people, to smear these people, to libel these people, to accost these people as they were sitting down at restaurants because he participated in the propagandist perspective, the propaganda idea that Trump supporters are all hateful and backwards, and maybe not people that were losing their jobs because they worked in factories, losing their jobs because, they don't live in LA and New York and they live in all that stuff in between, right? Between New York and California, where real America is, because they were losing their jobs in mining, because they were losing in terms of the economy, the farmers that were losing. Did anybody ever stop and pause and say, maybe I shouldn't paint these people as Nazis and allow these people to be attacked simply because I disagree and I don't live like that, because I fly private from New York to LA? Did anybody ever pause and say, let me see this individual as a human being and say, why did this person not only get 75 million votes when he ran the first time, but then he increased that by 10 million votes? Anybody ever feel bad for the people that grew up without any money, people like me who believed the lies of people like Alec Baldwin, my entire life and lost because of it, and suddenly realized you made me think I had to be a victim? Does anybody ever feel bad that you took away people's lives. If you wonder why Trump doubled his support in the last election amongst women and gained 8 points amongst black men, and Latino votes, forget it. I mean, just an explosion of Latino votes. Why are all these brown people turning to Trump? Black and brown people turning to Trump? Hispanic people, black people, why are we turning to Trump? Anybody ever feel bad? Anybody ever consider that we feel like we've had our lives taken from us by lies like the media narrative that Alec Baldwin played a part in? So excuse me if I don't feel bad for Alec Baldwin. And this is kind of what I said to her. I mean, I didn't say it that long, obviously. This is what I said to her. And she brought up, obviously, I think you saw me share, like, she brought up, like, Dr. Fauci out of nowhere. And I was like, dude, we're going to talk about Dr. Fauci. It has nothing to do with Dr. Fauci. And her perspective was, you people don't really even care about puppies, or, care about puppies, but you're pretending to because of, you just don't like Dr. Fauci. And I'm just like, no, I think even if you're not the biggest dog person, like, sticking a puppy's head and watching it be eaten alive is kind of like, everybody kind of feels bad for that. It's just, unless you're a murderer, I don't know. And so we were having this conversation. At some point she said, and this is really what changed it for me. She said, I disagree with you on everything, but I appreciate that you're, or maybe just articulate or well-spoken. I appreciate that there's this quality about you that I can see. And in that moment, I kind of detached Ireland from her father. Like, I actually said to myself, she is not her father, right? And for me to, of course, I'm annoyed because she's sharing a live, something I never said, but for me to treat her as if she's responsible for who her father is actually wouldn't make me any better than Alec Baldwin, right? If I'm just going to say, I'm not going to see you as a human being, and I'm just going to say, this is your father, then I'm no different than Alec Baldwin, right? I'm no different than Alec Baldwin not seeing the individual Trump supporters, not understanding who these people were, and viciously attacking them. And I think at that point, I actually kind of wanted to know, like, who is Ireland Baldwin? What are her perspectives? What does she think about Trump supporters? And I sensed that there was kind of a curiosity because, she said to me, things got obviously dialed down very quickly and it got much more civil. And she mentioned to me, the thing about Dr. Fauci, and she said, my angle here wasn't that people don't feel bad for puppies that are struggling, that are being tortured, but I just don't understand how, you guys can when there are people that trophy hunt. Like conservatives trophy hunt. There are conservatives with pictures in Africa holding up, wild animals. And I said to her, hey, the other perspective of that, and maybe you don't know this, but the #1 animal conservationists in the world are hunters. You're not educated about that, actually. And it's something I said to her that I had to educate myself about as recently as 6 years ago. I had no idea how it worked in Africa. I didn't know until I went to Africa. I didn't know that actually the animal conservationists, the people that live in the villages love them, right? These animals get tagged because maybe they're overpopulated, maybe because they just ran into a village and killed a bunch of African children, and they get tagged, and they allow these hunters, it's a sport for them to buy in to these hunts. Maybe it's for $1 million to kill one animal, and that $1 million goes to animal conservation efforts, And then the food, then these animals, what do they do with the meat? The African kids eat them. I didn't know that when they stop hunters from being allowed to hunt, when policy stops it, more animals die after the fact, until I educated myself. And I told her that. I was like, you just don't have this perspective right. You should actually look into this, right? The people you think you hate have probably saved a lot more animals than you have. She then brought up a tweet of mine from a while ago, and I can't remember specifically what it was. Again, I'm paraphrasing this whole conversation, but it was about trans children. And, she asked me, why would you say this about a kid wearing a dress? It was about like a guy wearing a dress. And, she said, why would you say this? Like, don't you see how this hurts them, right? And I basically said to her, yes, I do see how it hurts them, right? I do see how adults allowing children to do this hurts them long term. I said, you don't know the other side of this debate. I have sat down with formerly trans people who have chopped their genitals off, and they are being censored, and they're not allowed to speak, and they're trying to say the other side of this is very dark. These kids are being manipulated by adults into believing that, you know, fiction is fact, and they can't get their lives back once they do that. Their entire lives are ruined. You know, I've spoken to trans people that have told me that they were sexually molested when they were kids. And instead of addressing that molestation, they're stepping into a different personality, and they're not being treated. Now, I'm not saying this is every single person, but again, to Ireland, I said there is another side to this debate, you know? And I said to her, if she's open to hearing it, like I'm open to sharing. And listen, I don't think we're gonna change each other's minds. I don't think Alec Baldwin is going to be a conservative, and I know for a fact I'm never going to be a leftist. I'm never going to be a Democrat, but I think that she was surprised that there is another side, because we're so used to seeing these flashy headlines in which we were both guilty of reacting to, like, you know, she reacted to it and then I reacted to her reaction. And yet in between that, you know, there's humanity. There is humanity. Like, we have to do a better job of realizing that the media is vicious in smearing people and libeling people, and people don't even hear or see what somebody says or tweets before the media gets out in front of it and just completely strips it of its context and the other half of the statement and says this is a headline, right? And people are reactive, and also in seeing her humanity. Like, despite how I feel about Alec Baldwin, that's a hard thing for his family to go through. Point blank, period. Like, that is, I can't even imagine, like, even if somebody hated me so much, if something like that happened to me, I would hope that they would exercise humanity towards my family, even if it wasn't towards me, towards my family, right? Towards my husband, towards my son, towards people that have nothing to do with how others feel about me. And I think I can do that. I think I can not feel bad for Alec Baldwin, but feel very bad for Alec Baldwin, and feel very bad for the Baldwin family. I think it's possible. I don't think it has to be an either or. So I wanted to share that with you guys because I thought it was an unexpected ending. And, you know, again, like I said, probably not going to change any hearts and minds, but I think we have to do enough of a good job as sharing when something is civilized and something is good between two opposing viewpoints, as we do sharing when something ends up being bad and being sour. Sometimes it's not really about scoring points, or maybe it is. Maybe the best points you could possibly score are actually seeing the humanity in one another. Anyways, that's it, guys. Happy to be back in America. Show's back on Monday. If you didn't catch up on the Granddad episode, you should, obviously. dailywire.com/subscribe. And you can use my code